Hansmaker is launching their new dual 20-watt diode laser and 30-watt fiber laser engraver called the D1 Ultra via their Kickstarter campaign beginning November 13th. Let me show you how the D1 Ultra dual 20-watt diode and 30-watt fiber laser engraver could be one of the most versatile engravers in the market. This versatile dual 20-watt diode and 30-watt fiber laser machine can engrave over 300 materials and cut quite a few materials as well. The fiber laser can perform deep engraving in a variety of metals such as brass and aluminum. It can engrave different colors in stainless steel, and it can engrave stone. While the diode laser can engrave wood, leather, paper, and dark acrylic, just to name a few materials. Hi, I'm Ken of Wrist Innovations, and I have organized this video into chapters listed in the description that will allow you to skip around the video depending on what is important to you. I would like to thank Hansmaker for not only sending me the D1 Ultra laser engraver, but also the optional rotary accessory and the 800mm conveyor module for my evaluation. I'm going to show you the versatility of many types of engraving you can do with this complete system. Okay, let's get started. Hansmaker is a division of Hans Laser, which has over 30 years experience in manufacturing and R&D of industrial laser equipment, holding more than 5,000 patents. Since Hansmaker is launching their D1 Ultra on Kickstarter, I just want you to be aware of the risks associated with backing a Kickstarter campaign. There are no guarantees that if a Kickstarter campaign is funded that any company will meet their commitments. So you have to view Kickstarter as a risk that you could lose your money versus the benefits of buying a product at an early bird special pricing. With that being said, more recently established companies such as Hansmaker are launching their new products on Kickstarter to gain an instant boost in sales and serve as a marketing strategy. So it is in their best interest to have a successful Kickstarter campaign to enhance their brand. Ultimately, it's always your decision on whether to fund a Kickstarter campaign. First, let's talk about the features of the D1 Ultra laser engraver. The D1 Ultra laser engraver consists of a 1064nm wavelength 30-watt fiber laser and a 455nm wavelength 20-watt diode laser. The laser spot size of the fiber laser is 0.06 millimeters in diameter, and the laser spot size of the diode laser is 0.08 millimeters by 0.1 millimeters, which allows you to engrave ultra-fine details. The laser has a maximum speed of 10,000 millimeters per second, which is much faster than many laser engravers on the market. The 20-watt diode laser can cut 15 millimeters of acrylic and 20 millimeters of thick wood, while the 30-watt fiber laser can cut 0.5 millimeter thick aluminum. The dual laser engraver is fully assembled right out of the box. Everything is integrated in the main body of the laser engraver. It is certified as a Class 1 laser, and the protective doors swing open for easy access to the work area. You have the option to turn on or off the door switch, which will prevent the laser from firing if the door is open. You will need to have the doors open when using the optional rotary or conveyor modules. There are galvo mirrors in the laser head that direct the laser through the lens down to the workpiece. Since the fiber laser is a pulsed laser, the frequency of the pulses can be adjusted. However, as of now, the customer doesn't have access to make the frequency changes. This may change in the future. It has an emergency stop button, main power button, shutter key, and Z-axis knob located on the right side of the unit. Also on the right side, you can connect the rotary attachment, conveyor belt, foot switch, air cleaner, USB drive, and a cable to the computer. The D1 Ultra has a 220mm by 220mm engraving area, which can be expanded to 220mm by 800mm when using the conveyor belt. The maximum processing height is 150mm. The D1 Ultra has a motorized Z-axis that has an autofocus feature, or you can manually focus the laser using the knob on the right side of the unit. To focus the laser on your workpiece, when you move the Z-axis up or down, you will see a blue dot and a red dot that move closer together or farther apart, so when they converge into one dot, the laser should be focused on your workpiece. The D1 Ultra has a 16 MP resolution camera, resulting in an incredibly sharp and detailed image that will easily allow you to orient your images on your workpiece. The D1 Ultra includes a strong external duct fan generating an airflow of 146 cubic millimeters per minute. For my installation, I connected the included exhaust hose and duct fan to my large exhaust system that vents all the fumes to the outside. I installed an AC Infinity 6-inch diameter inline exhaust fan that generates 400 cubic feet per minute airflow. So this thing can suck the paint off the wall. It has 10 speed settings and it's relatively quiet. A link is in the description below. The D1 Ultra has an external touchscreen that allows you to interact with the machine, such as browsing files on a USB drive, one-click start, and a few other features. The symbols are a bit cryptic, and I found that I rarely used it since I had my laptop computer right next to the machine. The base plate has threaded holes to mount workpiece locating fixtures, and for cutting, you can install the separate elevated base plate for better airflow under the workpiece. Even with the built-in safety enclosure, it is still recommended that you always wear laser-approved glasses or goggles. Hansmaker provided a pair of laser glasses. However, they are not certified, so I recommend you buy a pair of certified laser glasses or goggles that are certified for the wavelengths of the fiber laser and diode laser. I use this pair of laser goggles that fully protect my eyes. They are very comfortable and they are certified for this laser's 455 nanometer and 1064 nanometer wavelengths. A link is in the description below. I view the safety enclosure as a secondary protection, so you should always wear your laser goggles. When using the rotary attachment or the conveyor, the machine's doors need to be open, so you absolutely must wear your certified goggles then. Once you've assembled the laser, which I will cover in the next section, to turn on the laser, make sure the emergency button is extended out, turn the key to the horizontal position, and then just push the power button on the right side of the unit. The D1 Ultra uses Hansmaker's own M+ software, which I had a learning curve to go through since I normally use Lightburn for my laser engravers. At this time, the D1 Ultra is not compatible with Lightburn, which I feel is a disadvantage of the D1 Ultra. The more I used the M+ software, the more comfortable I became using it. However, there are several features missing from the M+ software that I hope Hansmaker will add to future versions of their software. I believe they are investigating what would be involved with making the D1 Ultra to be compatible with Lightburn, but I'm not aware of any of the specifics on that point. I will point out the software areas of improvement throughout this video as they come up. The D1 Ultra has a number of great accessories, including an optional 4-in-1 rotary accessory, which allows you to engrave cylindrical workpieces such as tumblers and rings, as well as spheres and other various shapes of workpieces. It also has an optional conveyor, which expands your working area to 220 millimeters by 800 millimeters. Another option is an air purifier, which includes a 4-layer filtration system that filters out 99% of PM2 and 98% of harmful gases. Now let's talk unboxing. The D1 Ultra arrived well protected in its packaging. It's pre-assembled right out of the box, and it only takes a few minutes to remove the components from the foam packaging and attach the various cables and mount the exhaust hose. The main accessories box contained the instruction manual, power supply, cables, laser glasses, locator fixtures, base plate for cutting, touchscreen, foot switch, and a sample pack. First, install the exhaust system and make sure you exhaust the fumes outside. Next, connect the power supply. Make sure the emergency stop is in the outward position. Ensure the shutter key is inserted and in the open or horizontal position. Open the doors and remove the lens protective cover. Connect the touchscreen. Connect the USB cable from the laser to your computer. Install the Hansmaker M+ software onto your computer by going to the Hansmaker website. Turn on the D1 Ultra by pressing the power button on. Search in the M+ software for your laser and double-click to connect the laser to the M+. Go to the D1 Ultra setup and turn on the internal light, turn on the laser focus, and determine if you want the D1 Ultra to stop engraving if the doors are opened. Normally I turn that on, but when you are using the rotary or the conveyor, you will need to turn that interlock switch off. Place a test piece into the laser and focus the laser. For a manual focus, you can manually focus the laser by turn the Z-axis knob clockwise or counterclockwise to move the laser head up or down. You'll see a blue dot and a red dot. The goal is to cause the two dots to converge to one spot. When I first tried to manually focus my workpiece, I could get the red dot to be in parallel with the blue laser within 1/4 of an inch, but I couldn't get them to exactly overlap. When I spoke with Hansmaker about this, they sent me a brief video on how to adjust the red dot. The red laser is mounted in a ball and socket, similar to your hip joint, so the red dot laser became misaligned during shipping. So I followed Hansmaker's advice and I adjusted the red dot laser. You can also use the autofocus function to automatically focus the laser to your workpiece. Click on the icon at the top of your computer screen. You will see a message that states the Z-axis needs to be homed first, so click yes. Once the laser head reaches home, it descends down until the laser head is focused with your workpiece. When I initially tried the autofocus feature, I received a failure message. I reached out to Hansmaker for troubleshooting help, and they were very responsive. I unplugged the D1 Ultra and I removed the top cover plate from the laser head, and I immediately noticed that a small cable connector had become disconnected during shipping. My theory is that the package must have taken quite a hit because this connector had been RTV sealed, so there was quite a force to dislodge the cable. I plugged the cable back into its connector, and then I plugged the D1 Ultra back in and repeated the autofocus feature, and it worked flawlessly. Now let's look at the impressive capabilities of the D1 Ultra engraver by engraving some parts. First, let's use some 3mm alder wood to engrave and cut an insert for my 3D printed bottle opener. I placed the cutting base plate into the D1 Ultra and placed my alder wood approximately in the center. I opened up the Hansmaker M+ software, then opened up my design file. I turned on the power to the D1 Ultra. Notice that the message in the right corner states the device is not connected. Click on the message and the following pop-up appears. Double-click on the D1 Ultra from the device list. The D1 Ultra appears on the upper right corner. Click on the drop-down menu and turn on the following: Enable Safety Gate, Focus Laser, and Fill Light. The safety gate will turn off the laser if the doors are opened. The focus laser will allow for the red dot light to be visible, and the fill light turns on an internal LED light. Make sure it's set to the default plain processing mode. Click the layers icon in the lower left corner. This shows you I have two different layers, one for the engraving of the R and the other for the cutting of the circle. I wasn't able to drag the layers in a different order, so this means you have to make sure that you create the order of operations in the correct order. In other words, engrave then cut. It's odd to me that the first layer is the cut and the second layer is the engrave, but when I engraved the workpiece, the engraving was completed first, then the cutting, which is what I wanted. This is an area of improvement for the M+ software that I hope Hansmaker can add in the near future, the ability to move layers around by dragging them. For the cutting, I set the process type to line engrave, laser type to diode laser, power to 100%, speed to 75 millimeters per second, and 10 passes. For the engraving, I set the process type to fill engrave, laser type to diode laser, power to 80%, and speed to 3000 millimeters per second and 1 pass. Hansmaker has a nice start to a material library by clicking the top of the screen. You can choose from metal, coated metal, leather, and wood. When I clicked on the wood icon, they have 4 choices. I clicked on the beech wood and hit confirm. You can then choose the darkness of engraving you want by clicking on one of the squares, and the values will automatically be loaded into your file. Unfortunately, as of now, there aren't any matrices for cutting. This brings me to my next area of improvement for the M+ software. I know the software is new and Hansmaker plans to add to the material library. However, the M+ software currently doesn't have the material test features that Lightburn software has. In Lightburn, you can quickly create a custom matrix of power and speed to test the best settings for any material. This means for the M+ software, you must create your own custom matrix, which is a very time-consuming task. The next thing you need to do is focus the laser head. Click on the icon in the upper right corner of the screen. Every time you power on the laser and try to focus the laser, a pop-up message will appear that requires you to reset the motor. Click Confirm. The laser head will move to the top position. Then it will lower and focus onto your workpiece. I'm not exactly sure why the laser head wouldn't automatically home itself every time you power on the machine, but maybe Hansmaker has a reason for this. A small message will appear at the top of the screen indicating the autofocus was a success. Next, left mouse click on the camera icon in the upper right corner, and the camera will take a photo of your workpiece. This high-resolution camera is great for allowing you to accurately position your artwork on your workpiece. If you want to remove the photo, right-click the camera icon. If you click on Preview in the lower right corner of your screen, a red border will appear on your workpiece indicating where the engraving will take place. When you are ready to perform the engraving, click on Mark at the lower right corner of the screen. A pop-up warning message will appear to remind you not to leave the area while the laser is engraving. Click Confirm. The laser will then perform the engraving operation. This brings me to my next area of improvement of the M+ software. There is no time scale indicating how long the engraving task will take, or a percent indicator completer as well. So on longer, more complicated jobs, you have no idea how long they will take. Also, there is no pause button to temporarily stop the engraving process. The only option is to stop the engraving process by pressing the Escape key. The D1 Ultra did a nice job of engraving and cutting my bottle opener insert. For our next test, let's engrave an image onto a black anodized aluminum business card. The setup is nearly identical to the wood test that we just finished. You want to be aware of ambient lighting that could impact the camera and the autofocus feature. I placed a piece of alder wood as a background so the black anodized aluminum would easily stand out. For the engraving, I set the process type to fill engrave, laser type to IR, which is the fiber laser, power to 90%, speed to 2000 millimeters per second, and 1 pass. The D1 Ultra did an excellent job in engraving the anodized aluminum. Next, I wanted to try some surface engraving in brass. The setup is almost identical as the black anodized business cards. For the engraving, I set the process type to fill engrave, laser type to IR, power to 100%, speed to 125 millimeters per second, and 10 passes. This engraving also turned out nice. Now, let's use the D1 Ultra for the practical application to personalize my stainless steel wrench. For the engraving, I set the process type to fill engrave, laser type to IR, power to 80%, speed to 1000 millimeters per second, and 3 passes. This engraving also turned out nice. So, the next time you borrow my wrench, I'll be easily able to find it in your toolbox. Let's see how the D1 Ultra can engrave a slate coaster. For the engraving, I set the process type to fill engrave, laser type to IR, power to 80%, speed to 1000 millimeters per second, and 1 pass. I think the engraving turned out great. It has a nice contrast and you can easily see the engraving in the slate. Now, let's expand the capability of the D1 Ultra by connecting the 4-in-1 rotary attachment. The Hansmaker rotary attachment is a very flexible tool that allows you to engrave cylinders such as cups and tumblers, spheres such as Christmas balls, and rings. Let's gain a bit of experience first by engraving on this maple cylinder. First, you need to turn off the D1 Ultra and connect the rotary cable to the D1 Ultra. When you turn on the power to the machine, you will need to go through a similar setup as before, but with a few changes. Click on the process mode icon at the top of the screen and choose Rotate Accessory Processing. Next, enter the diameter of the workpiece. In my case, the maple dowel is 25.4 millimeters. Go to the device settings and turn off the enable safety gate because you will need to have the doors open in order for the rotary to fit onto the D1 Ultra. Turn on the focus laser and fill light. Move the rotary so the blue laser is at the top of the cylinder and click on autofocus. Take a photo of the workpiece. Align the image, or in my case the text, test, so that the engraving will be at the origin of the laser. This will wrap the text around the cylinder. Rotate the text 90 degrees if you want it to be parallel with the axis of the cylinder. I chose Fill Engrave Diode Laser 10% power, 100 millimeters per second, in one pass. Click on the preview to see where the engraving will be made on the cylinder. Click on Mark to engrave the cylinder. The rotary worked well. Another area of improvement for the M+ software is to add the ability to rotate the workpiece so that you can engrave on another section of the workpiece. The only way I could see to do this now is to loosen the jaws of the rotary and rotate the workpiece, and then tighten the jaws. But this would lead to possibly moving the whole workpiece out of alignment. The only other option I could think of was to turn the power off the D1 Ultra, rotate the workpiece, and then turn the power back on to the D1 Ultra. Of course, this meant I had to go through the setup mode all over again. Now, let's engrave this painted stainless steel tumbler using the rotary. Because the tumbler has a curve, raise the left end of the rotary using shim to make the area where you want to engrave to be as level as possible. Perform the device settings as you did for the maple dowel. Orient the image so that it's aligned with the origin of the laser. Choose Fill Engrave Diode Laser 70% power and 20 millimeters per second in one pass. Click on the preview to see where the engraving will be made on the tumbler. Click on Mark to engrave the tumbler. The D1 Ultra did a nice job on the tumbler. Now, let's get wild and crazy and engrave the inside of a stainless steel jewelry ring. You will need to change the jaws of the rotary and install these 3 fingers that are made to hold rings and spheres. Rotate the rotary head so the laser will have an unobstructed path to the inside diameter of the ring. The device settings are the same as the maple dowel and tumbler. Make sure the blue laser is hitting the inside diameter of the ring and perform the autofocus function. Orient the text or image just like for the maple dowel or tumbler, but this time change it to reflect vertically. If you don't do this, the engraving will look like this. Choose Fill Engrave IR Laser 80% power, 25 millimeters per second, and one pass. Click Preview to make sure the image will fit on the ring. Then click the Mark button. The engraving turned out great. It was slightly off-center, but I'm sure I'll be able to fine-tune that for the next time. What a beautiful inscription. I will always love you. Well, I don't even know you, so how about if we're just friends? Here's another great feature of the D1 Ultra, engraving curved surfaces. Let's test this out by engraving this curved surface of this wood serving spoon. First, perform the autofocus function. Then go to the process mode and choose 3D processing. Create an 8x8 grid and make sure you click on Show to show the entire grid. Adjust the grid to cover the area where you want to engrave. Click on Confirm. The D1 Ultra will create a 3D point cloud. You can adjust your image so that it is centered where you want it. Choose Fill Engrave Diode Laser 80% power, 2000 millimeters per second, and one pass. Click on Mark. It's really cool to see how the laser engraves the bottom, and then you can watch how the engraving literally climbs up the curve of the spoon. I also engraved this image on another spoon, and I think the spoons turned out great. I wanted to try deep engraving in a brass coin, so I chose an image from the D1 Ultra library. Make sure it's set to the default plain processing mode. Go through the autofocus and take a photo so you can align the image to the brass coin. Initially, I tried a number of settings. However, I wasn't able to get any deep engraving, so I contacted Hansmaker for help. They recommended the following settings. Choose Line Engrave, density of 20 lines per millimeter, IR laser, 100% power, 1000 millimeters per second, 1 pass, and 500 relief layer number. Even with those settings, I still wasn't getting any deep engraving. After some more communications with Hansmaker, I autofocused the laser head, and then I manually lowered the laser head, initially by 3 millimeters below the autofocus. But that still did not solve the problem. Next, I manually lowered the laser head a total of 7 millimeters below the autofocus setting, and I was able to generate this deep engraving in my brass coin. Hansmaker explained to me that for deep engraving, the engineers adjusted the algorithm to be 3 millimeters higher than the autofocus position. The autofocus is sensitive to reflective materials, so this may have contributed to my troubles. But the bottom line is that I was able to eventually produce a deep engraving in my brass coin. I think it turned out very well. For our last engraving project, let's get super wild and crazy and try to figure out how to use the conveyor belt to perform continuous batch engraving. Hansmaker calls this positioning processing, which is a mode of processing multiple products with the same image, and this can be done with or without the optional conveyor. Since Hansmaker was kind enough to provide the conveyor, I definitely wanted to incorporate this in my evaluation. This was the most difficult process for me to set up because because the Hansmaker M+ operating manual is a great start, there are many sections that really need a lot more detailed step-by-step instructions. I tried to follow the operating manual to engrave a batch of wood keychains. However, I failed miserably, including permanently tattooing my conveyor belt. I reached out to Hansmaker for help, and coincidentally, they were just finishing up one of their YouTube videos on this very subject. So they sent me a link, and that was exactly what I needed to figure out how to use the fantastic features of the conveyor. Here's what I learned. Turn off the power to the D1 Ultra and attach the conveyor using 2 screws. Then attach a cable from the conveyor to the D1 Ultra, and then turn the power back on the D1 Ultra. For my test, I will use these wood keychains. For the device settings, turn off the enable safety gate and fill light and turn on the focus laser. Perform the autofocus function, then take a photo of the workpiece. Orient the image on the keychain, and then choose Fill Engrave, Diode Laser, 40% power, 200 millimeters per second, and 1 pass. Change the process mode to positioning processing. Initially, you won't have any templates, so click on Create Template. Crop the image to capture the keychain. Create a name for the template and set the X and Y offsets to 0. Next, set the maximum number of targets, which is the maximum number of workpieces you will be placing within the 220 millimeters by 220 millimeters work area. Remember, the total work area of the conveyor is 220 millimeters by 800 millimeters. But in this case, we are describing the laser engraving area at a point in time. I chose 2 pieces. Next, choose the minimum match threshold. The larger the percentage, the smaller the error. Hansmaker recommends a default setting of 75% to 85%. Next, choose whether you want to enable the conveyor. In my case, I said yes. I placed 2 keychains within the 220 millimeters by 220 millimeters work area, and then I clicked on the mark button. The laser immediately recognized the 2 keychains and engraved them, even though they were randomly placed on the work area. After the 2 keychains were engraved, a message popped up and asked if I was satisfied with the engraving of the first 2 keychains. I clicked on Continue Processing, and the conveyor moved 220 millimeters to bring 2 more keychains into the active work area. The D1 Ultra engraved the 3rd and 4th keychains, and the process repeated. I think the positioning process function, especially with using the conveyor, is one of the best features of this new laser engraving system. Now let's talk cost. At the making of this video, the week of November 10th, 2025, Hansmaker is planning to launch their Kickstarter campaign on this Thursday, November 13th, 2025. This is my understanding of the Kickstarter pricing of the D1 Ultra. The D1 Ultra will be $2,599, normally $4,199, so a 38% discount. The D1 Ultra Plus Rotary will be $2,799 versus $4,499 retail, which is also a 38% discount. The D1 Ultra plus the conveyor will be $2,939, normally $4,769, so a 38% savings. The D1 Ultra plus rotary plus conveyor will be $3,069, normally $5,119, a 40% savings. The D1 Ultra plus rotary plus conveyor plus air filtration system will be $3,939, normally $6,459, a 38% savings. Of course, you'll want to confirm the final pricing when you log into the Kickstarter on November 13th. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Kickstarter campaigns have risks associated with them, and there are no guarantees that this or any other Kickstarter campaign that you back will ensure that you will receive the product being sold to you. So only consider backing a Kickstarter campaign if you can afford to lose your money. With that being said, more larger companies appear to be using Kickstarter as a springboard for their new products. So campaigns such as the Hansmaker may have less risk than the typical Kickstarter campaign. And this is just my opinion, because ultimately you need to decide what is right for you. If you do decide to move forward with purchasing a Hansmaker D1 Ultra, I have provided an affiliate link to their Kickstarter campaign in the description below. If you use the link, I will be given a small commission from Hansmaker, which will help my YouTube channel to bring you more content on 3D printing and laser engraving. So, now let's go to our final summary. After getting past some initial technical issues associated with some shipping damage, overall, I've had a great experience with the Hansmaker D1 Ultra laser engraver. My first impression is that the hardware is of an excellent quality. I think the Hansmaker M+ software has quite a few nice features. However, I think the biggest area of improvement needed is the M+ software, since it is missing many of the features of the popular Lightburn software. The good news is that if Hansmaker continues to develop their M+ software, and they are able to make the D1 Ultra compatible with Lightburn, then they will really have a very superior product. By having a 30-watt fiber laser engraver and a 20-watt diode laser at my fingertips, it allows me to engrave in over 300 materials. The 0.06mm fiber laser spot size and the 0.08 by 0.1mm diameter diode laser spot size, combined with the maximum speed of 10,000 millimeters per second, allows the D1 Ultra to produce very detailed engravings at a very fast speed. The D1 Ultra offers several modes of engraving, including flat engraving, curved or 3D engraving, rotary engraving, batch engraving, either with or without the optional conveyor, and large-scale engraving on products up to 220 millimeters by 800 millimeters. The full safety enclosure makes it easy to safely operate the laser, although you do need to have the doors opened when you're using the rotary or conveyor module. An area of improvement would be if Hansmaker could offer a separate U-shaped enclosure that could be used when using the rotary or the conveyor. Another improved safety feature would be if the D1 Ultra had an emergency stop button located in the front of the machine, for instance on a cable similar to the touchscreen. Because when the doors are open during the rotary or conveyor modes, it's difficult to reach behind the doors to gain access to the current emergency stop button on the right side of the machine. I ran into this when I was trying to shut down the D1 Ultra when I realized it was engraving directly into the conveyor belt. When combined with the optional conveyor module, the D1 Ultra has one of the largest work areas of 220 millimeters by 800 millimeters for dual laser desktop laser engravers on the market. The 16MP high-resolution camera is a great tool to precisely orient your images to your workpieces, and it's a critical feature for the batch processing. The Kickstarter price of $2,599 for the D1 Ultra is 38% off the retail price of $4,199, and Hansmaker is offering similar percentage savings for varying package bundles that include the rotary, conveyor, and air purifier. I think that if you can afford the risk to back a Kickstarter campaign, then this may be a great choice for someone who needs the versatility of engraving that the D1 Ultra offers. What do you think? What attracts you to the D1 Ultra, and how do you compare it to other desktop laser engravers on the market? Let me know in the comments below. I will be going into a deep dive on the D1 Ultra by further testing a variety of materials and projects, so please consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out. Also, if you found this video useful, please consider hitting the like button. Thanks for watching. Bye!